speaking of Breadsword, we're going to be checking out the second half of Disney's Robin Hood, The Death of Color, and The Death of Color by Breadsword. Their previous documentary-style look at this was actually quite fascinating because it showed a dark time in a lot of Disney history when they were moving away from the initial, production and reusing a lot of assets, but being more free in what they can get away with because of it. And I want to see more because this is a style of Disney that I kind of missed. I saw the old ones. I saw the new ones after this, but this time in Disney, I don't know much about it. So this is kind of all new to me. And it's fast. I did not subscribe or leave a like last time. Oh, well, that's embarrassing. Oops. Moving on before I make any more comments about that.
Stylistically, there's a, for lack of a better term, Three Stooges-ness to the dynamic of Prince John and Sir Hiss that plays brilliantly throughout the film, only because of how little either actor sounds like they're trying to fit into a zillion-dollar book musical with individually airbrushed cells. My favorite example of this in a more contemporary work is Gaston and LeFou in Beauty and the Beast. Playing cruelty for a bit can't hit its mark unless the subject of it makes it funny. The ball is never in Gaston's court to get a laugh because we're supposed to think he deserves to die, but LeFou can respond in a way that instantly elevates the action into proper slapstick comedy. And this isn't just executed with its dialogue, but with all the sounds surrounding it. Every time Prince John tries to grapple Sir Hiss like he's Randy Orton, Sir Hiss lets out a ridiculous gurgle or a gulp or a squeak, something that instantaneously pulls our attention away from the action and towards the reaction. Most of the funniest moments in the film, honestly, are just Prince John getting dunked on and then physically accosting Sir Hiss because the faces and noises he makes in response, along with Terry Tommins' excellent, often bouncily stuttering delivery of his lines, gives him more of an air of Larry or Curly than, I don't know, the stepsisters in Cinderella. This also...
Also, random aside, now that he's brought up Three Stooges, some of their early work is currently in fair use because it has finally been long enough for that to happen. Yeah.
The underlings of the nobility a surprising amount of depth compared to what they're usually given in previous Robin Hood films, even the ones that are much more dramatically focused. Moments like these, going far beyond the simple, I'll have Robin's head or yours sort of spiel we're used to seeing between the ruler and his subordinates, reframe their depravity as being at least partially a result of the abuse from Prince John, rather than something that simply occurs to them to do because they're innately evil. This is most clear after the second in-universe song of the film, Alan Adale and the villagers of Nottingham singing what is effectively an ether-tier diss track against the would-be king, titled The Phony King of England.
Incredible as he is inept, whenever the history books are kept, they'll call him the phony King of England.
Hold up, we bringing pop.
Oh, it was a diss track. It makes sense now that it's pointed out, but I actually feel dumb for not realizing that. Hi, everyone. Welcome to the stream where I prove I did not think something through that was right in front of my face until it was pointed out, obviously. This never happens.
Hey, yo, off jump. You gotta fight him.
In the following scene, the Sheriff of Nottingham strolls into the castle singing it to himself, and then after an arduous warm-up routine from Sir Hiss, he belts out one of the meanest parts of the song an instant before Prince John enters the room. Not only is the sense of timing in the scene extremely funny, but there's a clear sense throughout it that the Sheriff and Sir Hiss on some level respect and even root for Robin. This is classic Robin Hood. Half the people he meets in his written tales are ones who try to kill him, who he then outsmarts and wins over with his charm. And there are tons more instances of this throughout the film, like Sir Hiss reacting with excitement that Robin hadn't died after the final confrontation with Prince John because that's the naturally more exciting turn of events. This take on the lackey's role in service to the nobility is interestingly employed a lot more in the adaptations which followed this one, but in my opinion, they mostly all missed the mark because they lacked the comedic timing and lightheartedness essential to the dynamic. To be clear, this isn't the only funny Robin Hood movie. Any good one is, but this is definitely the most consistently funny one that still manages to tell a Robin Hood story. Whether it's Robin telling Prince John's fortune with one hand and robbing him with the other, while Little John seduces the Rhino Guards and then steals their hubcaps, a subtle nod to Robin Raymond as Maud in The Prince of Thieves, or the Sheriff of Nottingham struggling to keep his crossbow-wielding deep southern vultures Trigger and Nutsy in check, while Trigger's paranoia keeps making him belligerently fire arrows, ricocheting across the castle, or the absolutely garbage Nutsy impression Robin tries to affect while singing the sheriff to sleep. I keep saying it, but this film really is carried by its cast, and just as importantly, how the cast was allowed to perform. Intimate, I think, is the word I keep looking for. It's all very intimate.
This is one of those things where I almost wish I knew more about Disney, because it feels like I should know about this, but I don't know a lot of old Disney. This is something that I haven't watched a lot of. I saw some of the really old ones, but never a lot of the style from here. I almost feel like Breadsword's work requires you to understand what's happening more thoroughly, which is not something I expected to hear or to say, but I don't dislike it. I just wish I knew more about Disney to get what he's referencing, saying how it's more intimate. Well, why? Why is it more intimate? What was less intimate about the previous ones? I think it's probably because this is their entire style of video that they've been covering, because I saw they had a lot of various videos. It's probably something that their audience is so well equipped with that it would be just repetitive information to say it right here. But I don't know. And it's kind of rubbing in my face right now that I don't know. And I want to know because I like what they're talking about. I like the surprisingly detailed and nuanced looks at the characterizations, but I don't know what the normal Disney control of their actors would be prior to this. Probably doesn't help that when I have seen the older films, it was when I was a kid myself, so I did not have any subtle looks at it in the slightest. If it wasn't a Disney film, maybe I'd even look into some of the older ones that might be in fair use by now. Yeah, we'll see what actually comes up eventually.
You know when you're talking to someone and you can hear them smiling? Like, you can't see it, but you know they're smiling as they're telling you something? That's kind of how this entire film feels. Much of the humor doesn't even land as I'm describing it, because you need to hear Brian Bedford sing "Rock-a-bye, Sheriff." You know, it's something you feel. You can literally hear him smiling in the booth. And he is such an effortlessly charming Robin, the only one to ever match Errol Flynn's. Carol Shelley, who played Madame Morrible in the original Broadway cast of Wicked, perfectly channels that same chaotic, exuberant, larger-than-life energy to Lady Cluck. Reitherman's answer to Maid Marian's Lady Bess. Phil Harris as Little John channels every bit of warmth that he did as Baloo, and his anxiety-fraught jolliness is irreplaceable in the tapestry that this film weaves. John Fiedler and Barbara Luddy as the Church Mice, as well as Billy and Dory Whittaker, Dana Larita, and Richie Sanders as the Children of Nottingham, masterfully underscore both the barbarism the film's villains are capable of and the gentleness of its heroes. Billy, in particular, as Skippy, the audience's partial stand-in, is one of the most sincere performances of frailty mixed with idealistic confidence I've ever heard. The moment during the final battle within Nottingham Castle where he steps to finally draw his bow back with confidence, mirrored by Robin Hood stood beside him, is the single purest distillation of what the legend of Robin Hood means and what it means to the people who love it I've ever seen. And Monica Evans, as our vixen Maid Marian, is nothing short of heart-melting. Her voice is unquestionably the most enchanting iteration of any love interest Robin has ever had. Even at her loudest, the delivery of her every line is so soft that it feels like a whisper compared to the coarseness of the rest of the cast. And her...
This is one of those times where I kind of wish I had seen this, because I was told to watch this by my wife because she loves this movie and always is on me for never having watched it. And there's the problem. Talking about her voice, I don't know what that sounds like. This is just rubbing it in that I haven't seen this and I need to. Oh, I see why my wife recommended me to watch this. Oh, that's why. Yeah, that makes sense.
Her chemistry with Lady Cluck is far and away the best of any iteration of this relationship in the many tales which include it, due partly, I'm sure, to the fact that the two played Gwendolyn and Cecily Pigeon in the original Broadway cast of The Odd Couple, as well as in its film.
What's The Odd Couple?
Broadway, although this isn't often considered a true book musical, I think this is one of the most musically exciting films Disney has ever made.
Really?
It's free to be so creative and different within the broad framework
because they weren't
of retelling
expecting
a classic
it.
that it remains one of the most electric scores in Disney's history. I mean, we're ushered into the film by the pageantry of horns and string sections, only to then be replaced by the guy who wrote King of the Road, whistling its theme in its entirety. The music that plays during the battle after the archery tournament transitions from manic surf rock while Robin and Marian discuss how many kids they'll have, to variations on the fight songs from USC and the University of Wisconsin, while Lady Cluck strong arms rhino linebackers like she's Walter Payton. There's a 28-yard run from Mr. Explosion himself. It's capable of conjuring such turmoil and yet such joy and adventure and such yearning. This film doesn't have a villain song, nor does it really have an I Want song, but if it were to have one, it would be Robin humming the melody to his and Marion's theme, composed by Floyd Huddleston and George Bruns, simply titled Love, which plays after their escape as they run through Sherwood Forest, illuminated by fireflies in the silvery glow of a full moon.
Oh.
Again, not a cloud in the sky. Love isn't considered necessarily crucial to Robin Hood. Maid Marian wasn't even mentioned in the tales until the 1600s, around the same time Robin was elevated from a peasant scoundrel to a nobleman, usually an earl, dispossessed of his lands. But the performances of...
This is probably why I should have watched Overly Sarcastic Productions' cover of Robin Hood, because I didn't... Oh, just choking my own tongue. I didn't know that his story had changed from a peasant to a dispossessed nobleman. I've heard of different takes. I didn't realize it was a distinct way one changed. Huh.
Robin and Marian in Reitherman's Robin Hood, and the simple magic of its central theme as it plays over them, honestly convinces me that maybe it is. And if I had to pick a word to describe this film, that is surely the first one to come to mind.
Oh.
Love. The way the environment so beautifully exemplifies the development of its tale in spite of the fact that the studio was barely scraping by due to the loss of Walt and their funding, or the flagrant reuse of animation cycles from Jungle Book, The Aristocats, and even Snow White because of it. Even little things, the historical jokes woven into Prince John's character that the writers had to have known no one would get.
Oddly enough, it has become more relevant considering people thought Prince John was just a legendary figure, but not real, until they found him. Or at least I think it was Prince John they found under a parking lot a number of years ago. Yeah. Like when I say a number of years ago, I mean within, I think, the last decade. There's an entire series about it. I just remember hearing that they found Prince John. Or maybe I'm not sure if it was Prince John or someone else, but I think it was Prince John because he was known to have a hunch, and this one did have it. And it was buried ignominiously.
At the tournament, after Little John introduces himself as the Duke of Chutney, Prince John makes a remark to Sir Hiss in French. I've never heard anyone mention it. I couldn't find any comments about it, and I searched high and low for copies of the script that might include a translation as to what he says. Eventually, I gave up and just had a friend of a friend who speaks French transcribe it for me. Du savoir-faire, il y a ne sait pas, is what it says. Pardon my pronunciation. It means knowledgeable. Am I right? I like to think it's addressed to whoever noticed it. The nobility during the time of Prince and later King John, nicknamed John Lackland because he wasn't expected to inherit lands after his brothers, mostly only spoke French. There wasn't much of a reason to dignify the lesser territories of the Angevin Empire with learning the language of its peasants. In fact, his brother Richard hardly spent a few weeks in England in his entire reign, and of course, he didn't speak the language either. But John did. For whatever it was worth. French.
Huh. That's... Oh. That's actually kind of fascinating that the guy who is being lampooned is the one who wouldn't think of it. And Royce, I'm thinking of Richard III? Maybe. Honestly, it's all kind of getting fluxed around in my head, but I blame a lot of that on excessive consumption of NyQuil. I'd also be wrong regardless if I wasn't doing that, but I have the excuse right now, so I'm going to use it.
Francesco Petrarca once said of the Dark Ages, amidst the airs there shone forth men of genius, no less keen were their eyes, although they were surrounded by darkness and dense gloom. Like the many small lights in the nighttime of Sherwood Forest, Reitherman's Robin Hood is an attempt to illustrate joy in a world that has all been sapped of it. And I love it for that. But it also kind of breaks my heart. Disney's Robin Hood isn't the best Robin Hood film.
No?
Michael Curtis's The Adventures of Robin Hood pretty firmly takes that place. Personally, it's just so well crafted. Every frame is so dynamic and alive with these beautifully vivid colors. It's like a dream. Its score, composed by Eric Wolfgang Korngold, is one of the most arresting bodies of music ever put to the screen.
I'm going to disagree with him here. The best Robin Hood was always Men in Tights. I know what I said, and I stand by it.
Errol Flynn as Robin is the most cheerfully definitive portrait of a legend that there could be, and he's supported by some of the most brilliant actors of his time. Alan Hale is unassailable as Little John. I don't think we'll ever see someone begin to match him. Herbert Munden paints Much the Miller's Son with such a charming earnestness and gentleness. Olivia de Havilland as Maid Marian captures her in such an authoritative yet convincingly passionate light, taking over half the film's runtime to even begin to see past her cynicism him towards Robin's cause.
Oh.
Eugene Pallett as Friar Tuck is an unequaled source of warmth every time he's in frame, and Basil Rathbone as Sir Guy of Gisborne is surely the greatest actor to have ever graced the genre of swashbucklers, and by proxy, one of the greatest actors to have ever lived. His skills as a stage performer in Shakespeare, as well as a fencing champion, gave him the ability to not just dominate his scenes, but to uplift the actors he shared them with.
He actually was a fencing champion? I need to go back for a second because I do know a little bit about that. And by emphasis on little, I never got above a D ranking. Which sounds like it's not much because it's not. Oh yeah, you can see how he's coming. I'm just going to go back here. Let's moving forward. He's coming in for a big slash. The guy's raising it up. Oh, you can see how he's pulling back, going for a stab. Yeah. Huh. Those are actually general movements, but it's a mix of saber and foil at that point. And if he was a champion, then he probably would know foil, which is all based around timing and giving your opponent a time to respond, and excessive amounts of rules to the point where it's actually almost redundantly, disproportionately crazy that you even want to do this willingly. Personal opinion that I'm standing by. So yeah, that would make a lot more sense.
The ability to not just dominate his scenes, but to uplift the actors he shared them with. Famously coaching Errol Flynn on, as he called it, the finer art of swordsmanship. And Curtis's seemingly bottomless talent and understanding of creating films is undeniable in every shot and interaction and cue. Robin's final fight in the burning castle of Nottingham in Reitherman's Robin Hood is, again, a nod to this brilliant work. Robin and Sir Guy's shadows blasted against the stone walls by a sea of candles as they fight between them, at times kicking them towards the other or simply cutting them in half in their ferocity. Each flame a symbol of the spirit of rebellion that Robin represents and the populism through which his legend survives. But the 70s were a tumultuous time. 3 years after Wolfgang Reitherman's Robin Hood hit the silver screen in 1976, Columbia Pictures released Robin and Marian, a period drama starring Sean Connery and Aubrey Hepburn as the titular characters in a gritty, aged-up take on the tale.
Sean Connery. You know, suddenly the Robin Hood Man Tice joke about, but I can speak with an English accent, makes a lot more sense because, if you know one thing about Sean Connery, it's that his accent is very English. There's probably someone out there who's very furiously typing. I'm not going to wait for you.
Saturated, depressive, and with only...
Sorry about that. Tech issues. They happen a lot.
Coated in mud and
No, I
full
guess
of
that is from it. It
disaffected
does
and
look more
tortured,
like something out
missing
of
joy,
Holy
missing
Grail.
limbs from the torturous regime Robin fought in defense of. In the film's effort to ground Robin and his world as human, King Richard becomes the one our world knew. Not a lionheart, merely a lion. The film opens with his greed and bloodlust, a command to take a small castle for a rumored treasure inside on their way home from a failed crusade. Little John and Robin are told by an elderly, disabled man that the castle's been abandoned, the treasure doesn't really exist, and those who remain behind its crumbling walls are the women and children who are left behind. Richard orders them slaughtered after being told his treasure was merely a rock, and then orders Little John and Robin to their deaths for refusing to do it themselves. He later absolves them of the noose mere seconds before dying from an infectious wound from a single arrow thrown into his neck by the old man, a last act of defiance against who this Robin in our history know as a bloody bastard. When Robin returns, he learns that Marian is still alive, but quickly realizes she now hates him. She tells him that when he left and she realized he wasn't coming back, she opened her wrists and let them flow into the stream of Sherwood, whereupon she was found by the clergy and to forget him, became an abbess. They slowly...
Okay, wow. Can we just take a second to acknowledge that this is the same continuity? We went from, there's a bunch of really happy live action ones to the really funny Disney one. And then right after it, there was the dark, gritty, I wanted to not murder children and I was sentenced to death for it. And then my girlfriend at home decided to commit not alive and was sentenced to go to church. I'm joking about this right now because the sheer level of, oh my God, this is grim derp. it's like, yeah, but at the same time, yeah. What the actual hell, man? I don't even, this is not a little more gritty. This is just taking a flame to the actual lore. This is not Robin Hood at this point. This is just it's just using the name Robin Hood. This is such a significantly different story. I'll be honest, if they even say it takes place in Sherwood, I'll be surprised at this point. It's just the name Robin. I don't think there's anything else. It's Mary and Robin. Or let's just call him Rob. I can understand why this is one of the Sean Connery movies or pieces or shows or whatever that I've never heard about, because I'm going to take a wild guess here. Probably not one he once remembered.
Fall back in love, but the reality of their aging bodies, the small band which are left, mostly too old to fight, and the dilapidated forest clearing they once lived in is the writing on the wall. Robin finally faces the Sheriff of Nottingham in a duel of elected champions to avoid his men being slaughtered by the army now encamped at the forest's edge. And in this fight, he's dealt a crippling blow, though he does win the day. The army doesn't honor the conditions of the duel. Will Scarlet and Friar Tuck, as well as the rest of the merry men he had reassembled, are captured and presumably killed. Little John and Marion steal him away from the field, and lying on a bed in the abbey he had found her in, bleeding from his side and talking of battles yet to come, she tells him to drink the medicine she's prepared to make the pain go away.
And kills him?
She takes a drink herself. It's poison. After he realizes what she's done, Robin comes to terms with the reality that he wouldn't have had another day like that, and it's better to go then so the sadness of mundanity can't kill his joy entirely. As Little John crashes through the door and weeps at his side, Robin slowly losing consciousness, he asks Little John for his bow and pulls back one last arrow as Marion watches from the floor in tears. Robin tells Little John to bury them wherever it lands, looses the arrow, and the film closes on a shot of 3 pairs, beyond which the arrow lands.
Get horrible. What the hell were they thinking? It's like, I hate Robin Hood. Let's make him horrible and depressing and absolutely the most forgettable thing ever. I've heard of wild interpretations. This is not an interpretation. This is a complete and utter deconstruction of it. Although it was done in the 70s, so it's probably someone who didn't like the hippie aesthetic going like, let's not elevate the guy who's all about rebelling against authority. Let's show that when you rebel, it ultimately ends up crazy and stupid. I'm giving them that thought process because I don't actually believe they did that. I'm intentionally telling myself that's the reason because it gives a point to this. The other alternative would be, hey, do you know what people really want to see? Let's take someone who's fun and happy and make them wish they hadn't. Yeah. Because that's what this is.
To put it delicately, I fucking hate it. As if a light switch had been hit by somebody in the room, nearly every single Robin Hood film from 1976 onwards feels hell-bent on proving how real and rooted and dramatically potent it is. An absolute...
Oh yeah, they have had other ones that were supposed to be super realistic, but were also complete flops because of it. I forgot about them all.
Misunderstanding of the some 10 centuries worth of development the legend has been given, or the 15 movies that came up before 76, or the hundreds of episodes of its series. Every new take a more vapid, cynical exercise in working against the grain of the few immutable truths of Robin or his band or his loves or his world. Like I said before, Robin Hood is merely a collection of archetypes. The framework within which the legend can be successfully portrayed is more broad than literally any other I can think of. You have to try to fuck it up. There's literally already a grim retelling of Robin Hood from 1964 called Robin and the Seven Hoods. It's set in 1920 Chicago. Robin is called Robbo. He, John, and Will are played by the Rat Pack.
I'm sorry. Robin is Robbo. With the Rat Pack. They got Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. in here that I can recognize just by their faces alone. Okay, sure. This is a real thing. This is so ridiculous. I kind of respect it. I don't even know if it's good. I don't even care if it's good. I can respect it for it being stupid. If more than anything else, incredibly because it's stupid. Wow. That is a thing. Although I do kind of understand what he's talking about here. Because what he's describing as this horrible trend of destroying the metaphor that is Robin Hood is kind of a general theme that happens when you have such an established character. It's not even that people try and deconstruct it, it's that they feel they have to differentiate what they're doing from everything that came before. And sometimes that's done well. Sometimes when you take the lighthearted character and make them gritty, it's interesting because it gives people something new. And for the same reason, sometimes taking characters who are super gritty and then putting them into a really lighthearted piece is also fun. I'm looking at you, the pacifier movie. I know what I'm saying and I'm standing by this. It's a Disney movie. If you don't know it, watch it with someone else's kids. It makes a lot more sense that way. But it's the entire dynamic of that inversion of what you expect because of the built-up expectations. It happens a lot. And also because culturally, there are various swings that you can see definitive patterns between the 60s, the 70s, the 80s, and the 90s, where it goes back and forth between trying to embrace hope to watching that hope die and then embracing gritty realism, because people are swinging between the events of the day. So they're trying to find the grittiness or an escapist route. And it can vary between what they're doing at, and it doesn't always match up. So you get things where this is happy, this is great, but you're at a time where happy and great really don't feel right. So you want to go into gritty. And a lot of the times, sometimes that's not always the best choice. And we're looking at that swing at what he's being described as right here. Minus the picture of the Rat Pack on here. This is just what the hell, because it's the Rat Pack doing Robin Hood. But let's ignore that one.
And Peter Falk is Guy Gisborne. It's really dark. It opens on a murder and later they encase the sheriff's body in a cornerstone, but it's also fantastic.
Chicago.
It's hilarious, it's textured, it's vibrant, it's musical, it's hopeful. It's Robin Hood. Taron Egerton's Robin Hood is Batman. I mean,
what?
Seriously, after years away from his city, he becomes disillusioned, returns home, and realizing its citizens aren't safe from the violence and corruption, decides the city needs a champion of justice. He then gets swole in the decrepit manor he grew up in so that he can hone his combat abilities and begin to fight back to protect the townspeople, while concealing his activities by masquerading as a rich playboy, and they call him the Hood. It's
Oh god, it literally is Batman. Or, for that reason, Batman is Robin Hood. Minus, he's not stealing from the rich to give to the poor. He's beating up probably people who are poor and is rich.
fucking Batman. I feel like I'm losing my mind or something. To clarify,
I can't tell if that'd be good or bad.
I've read A Guest of Robin Hood. I know he can die. I've watched every movie. I've watched the anime from 1991 that I had to individually download the episodes of from YouTube.
There was a 1991 anime?
I bought all of this to make sure I knew what I was talking about, so now I get to make a...
Hi everyone, and this random acid trip is brought to you by Breadsword. Breadsword, this is a thing that apparently exists. Okay. I had never heard about that, and the music makes sense, but at the same time, if someone told me I was being pranked right now, I would believe that. And Mateus, you mentioned the 1991 anime was great. In your childhood had a German dub? Well, hopefully it was better than the English one, because that thing sounded like I know why people didn't like English dubs for a while. I got lucky. The ones I heard were Evangelion and Bubblegum Crisis. They were great. It was like 2020 or 33 or whatever it was called, the second dub of Bubblegum Crisis. That was amazing. I just got lucky. I only heard the good dubs. So apparently there's a lot of bad ones that I just missed completely. And this was apparently one of them.
Robin Hood video. That was the deal. This shit?
The Baron's men will be searching all over the village for us by now.
There's nothing to be scared of. This is Sherwood Forest.
But I am scared and hungry.
Gets it more right than a $100 million production 17 years later that for some reason was produced by Leonardo DiCaprio. Or
were they doing bullet time for arrows, which you could already see moving that speed natively? Okay.
Robin Hood 2010.
Also, I should point out, I don't have anything wrong with that anime. It's just, it looks so much like Gundam Wing that I was having just some expectation to see random Hiroyuki walk on the screen.
Very sorry, Ridley Scott. I love your movies. I don't like making negative videos. I never have. My dislike of Robin and Marion, or any film which has entered the canon after it, has nothing to do with the fact that Robin dies. He's already dead, and a few of them I just praised. The Robin in those tales are his sons. I don't care. The only film after 73 I even like, besides Men in Tights, is Peter Hewitt's Princess of
No. He's made the correct assumption. Men in Tights is the best. It's not what he said, but I'm going to take it that way anyways.
Because I think it's cool that it's his daughter, and at least that one has colors. Robin Hood isn't a person, he's an ideal. An idol of warmth with which for hundreds of years people have used to huddle around when the world feels cold. He can be anyone, anywhere. Sometimes he's a peasant, sometimes he's a lord. Sometimes Sir Guy is Baron Alvin, sometimes Will Scarlet is Will Stutley. Sometimes Will doesn't even exist. Sometimes Marion doesn't. Sometimes she's Lady Catherine. Sometimes King Richard's return is King John signing the Magna Carta. And sometimes Alan a Dale is...
Okay, the Magna Carta being signed by Prince John? Not how I was expecting that to go, but that's an interesting take.
It's Wada the Crabstaff, or Bing Crosby, and Frank Sinatra and Dean Martin have to sing to him because he has no drip. Not quite God, not quite human. There is no correct portrayal of Robin Hood because he has no drip.
Nope, I heard that correctly. That is a thing.
Quite God, not quite human. There is no correct portrayal of Robin Hood. He is untethered by things like place or gender or time. You can swap anything you want in him because he's a Honda Civic, and I don't care if a movie kills him. I care when it tries to kill his spirit. The textual acknowledgement that they've chosen explicitly to ignore the extremely sparse, out-of-the-way precepts which maintain Robin Hood as a legend. The communal idealism central to his very existence and perseverance as a champion for the downtrodden, even at his most selfish and politically and socially aloof as he is in his earliest ballads, a self-serving thief with little concern or purpose beyond the disruption of the nobility which oppresses those who found an ally within him. In his tales, that's been extinguished or rotted away, or whichever visual analog each director decides is their shorthand, scribbled filmic signature that says this isn't the Robin Hood you're used to, as if there ever was. I don't know. I'm not worried about, like, the future of Robin Hood or anything like that. I like the older movies. I don't like the new ones. I'm certain I'm not the first person to feel that way, but maybe I'm just fatigued. I mean, I like Kingdom Come as much as the next guy, but I'm admittedly a little tired of seeing heroes always surrounded by worlds of gray, because if they're there long enough, they start to feel kind of gray too.
When this came out 3 years ago? Okay. So he's not acknowledging some of the other things that happened after this. Just pointing out, I don't know which movie this is from. I couldn't get into the DC movies after Batman vs. Superman, and the big climactic reveal was their mothers have the same first name. Not relevant. Doesn't do anything. But that was the reveal. Wonder Woman was great in that movie for the 5 minutes she was on screen. And I've heard the Wonder Woman movies were good. Never saw them because I can't bring myself to do it. In the same way that Avengers Endgame was the last movie that the MCU made. Kind of wonder what they do after that, but not enough that I really care. Never going to find out. Guess it just never happened. Also, Mateos, is FGO right again with their version of a hero? Yeah, actually, Fate, who's used Robin Hood way more than just an FGO, he's kind of accurate. Because there's a lot of ways you could do him, and as long as he's generally lighthearted but can be an asshole, or sometimes maybe he's not, I don't know. That's accurate to his character. So, yeah, FGO scores another one for being textually accurate to how he's portrayed in many places.
We'll never know if Robin was ever really here or not, and that's precisely why he's loved. Before there were ballads written in his name, there were already festivals celebrating it. To try to anchor him or anyone from his universe to the world we live in is folly. That's how you ruin it. Maybe that's why Disney slaps, because it couldn't be further from it. In the prologue of The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, Howard Pyle writes to us from 1887, "You who so plot amid serious things that you feel it shame to give yourself up, even for a few short moments, to mirth and joyousness in the land of fancy. You who think that life hath naught to do with innocent laughter that can harm no one, these pages are not for you."
If there is ever a phrase that says, do not enjoy the 80s aesthetic, or if you enjoy the 80s aesthetic, you're not going to like this. Everything I just read is basically that. I think we're also in that swing again, so yeah.
That pretty much sums it up. How do you kill a legend? You don't, of course. But you can try.
And they're trying.
All you have to do is prove that they were really here. Have a good night.
So this is the first time I've seen Breadsword, and I love their commentary. I actually am really impressed by this. I can see why this was heavily recommended. But a lot of this comes down to, I need to go watch the initial Robin Hoods he mentioned, the Merry Adventures. I need to go watch the Disney Robin Hood, which is, again, probably why my wife wanted me to watch this in the first place, to make sure I finally got around to that, even though she's been asking me about that for literally half a decade. Nope, wait, longer. It's probably been over a decade at this point. Oh, yeah, I'm losing husband points on this one. So, yeah. This sounds poignant, but I think I would understand so much more if I understood where he was coming from. If I understood what he was talking about was how normal Disney acting prior to this was more controlled. I would love to see his other takes on other Disney franchises that are older than this to see what a controlled take would look like. There's so much I feel like I'm missing context-wise that his audience would understand. That I don't know if it would actually change my understanding of this video or not, but I want that now, and honestly, I'll probably get that because I'm going to probably binge this stuff. But it's fascinating that even with almost no understanding, I can get to that point right now. So, yeah, I'm glad I subscribed to Breadsword. I'm glad I left a like, and I definitely didn't forget to do that a couple weeks ago when I did it and forgot completely. Yeah. Look, Distraction Turkey Dragon. Distraction! There is nothing here. I didn't forget anything. Yeah, good old Turkey Dragon. Good for making sure I don't have to acknowledge anything I already did. Yeah. Yeah, for all the same. Thanks for watching, everyone. You guys know the deal. There's a link below to the video. Hit it up. I'll see you in the next one.